Hi there, Mr. Jones here with a video on leadership styles. This is down here now, looking at this last little section of this part of the specification on management, leadership and decision making, looking at the effectiveness of different styles of management and leadership. Really interesting topic. And one that you can go into in a lot of depth. I'll try and cover it relatively briefly in this video to give you an overview and enable you to answer exam questions that it would be relevant for. So first of all, I've just picked out some pictures of leaders, kind of past and present, all of them with very different leadership styles. So Winston Churchill, and Martin Luther King, maybe you could say they're quite similar in terms of their inspirational leadership style, moving people to follow them and really kind of demonstrating courage and imparting a clear vision to people. Oprah Winfrey's got a bit of a softer leadership style. She does lots of things for charity. I would imagine if you work for her, she takes pretty good care of you. Margaret, Thatcher and Ferguson, maybe you could consider them possibly quite similar in terms of the fact that the word that I keep on coming back to is ruthless. Maybe that's a little bit unfair, but they certainly were very strong leaders and did what they believed needed to be done. I think about Ferguson and his attitude to players who he believed had kind of crossed him or got bigger than him. He would just ship them out of the club, and it was very clear who was in charge. So lots of different types of leadership styles. I'm going to go through some of the more common ones in this video, starting with authoritarian and paternalistic leadership styles. So you can see these in a kind of continuum, with authoritarian leaders and paternalistic leaders being on one side of the continuum and democratic and laissez-faire leaders being on the other. I'll start with one extreme, the authoritarian leader. The leader is the decision maker within the organisation. The power within an authoritarian leadership structure very much lies at the top. Top-down communications. The leader decides what's going to happen. There are rules, regulations, procedures that outline what people should do. Coercion is done through rewards and penalties, so rewards for, say, finishing the production targets for today, maybe performance related pay or piece rate, where workers are rewarded for how much they make, and there are penalties if the manager's decisions are not followed through on. This links to Theory X management style. I will do a short video on that. And if we think back to the Tenenbaum-Schmidt continuum, the kind of the tell style, where the manager makes the decision and tells the workforce what's going on. Paternalistic is a bit of a softer version of authoritarian leadership. Okay, I think the phrase that's often associated with it is "Dad decides." Okay, you imagine, Dad is at the driving wheel of the car. You've got the children in the back. They may have some input in where the car is going, but at the end of the day, it's Dad who is the expert and Dad who's going to decide where the car is driven to. So there is a bit more two-way communication, but power in a paternalistic leadership structure is held firmly at the top. However, there is a lot more care kind of demonstrated for employee welfare, which leads to coercion kind of through making the workforce loyal. Links more to the cell type part of the Tenenbaum-Schmidt leadership, where the leader explains what the decision they made is, but tries to persuade the workforce that that's the best thing to do. And also Elton Mayo, who you'll learn about in the motivation section. In terms of examples, you might see a McDonald's as a sort of company where there might be an authoritarian leader. The jobs are very prescribed. Workers don't tend to stay that long, a lot of student workers. And so you need a manager there who kind of tells people what to do, basically. With the paternalistic leadership style, it's a bit outdated now. Famous examples included Cadbury's. I went to university in Bristol. Down the road from there is Keynsham, where there was a big Cadbury's factory. And they built a village down there for the workers in the Cadbury's factory. Fantastic football pitches, community centre for people, and they tried to build that sense of cohesion. I believe they'd made school for the children of the workers, so the workers were very, very loyal to Cadbury's. But like I say, not so many firms tend to operate like that these days. But these, I've grouped them together, and I'm going to kind of deal with the when they're effective and the drawbacks together, because these essentially are leadership styles where the leader is the decision maker. So when is it effective? Well, if there's a need for quick decision making, if there's an organisation in crisis, or if the situation is rapidly deteriorating, you would want to adopt a leadership style where there doesn't need to be consultation, decisions can be made quickly. We assume that the manager is the expert, and so can make reasonably good decisions under pressure. When the teams lack skills or knowledge or haven't been there that long, when jobs are prescribed, and when there is a high staff turnover and a lack of employee loyalty. So, given the example of McDonald's, they're kind of manufacturing joblets that students come and do for a short period of time and then they leave. Okay, high staff turnover. So, the army is another good example of where you would want an authoritarian leader. If you're being shot at, I doubt you want the leader to go to consulting you about what you think they should do. You want a decision made quickly. The drawbacks could be the impact on the morale. It might not be terribly motivating if the manager is constantly making decisions, not asking you for your input. You might feel like you don't have that much responsibility, which would lead to, of course, employees not actually taking responsibility for their work. Okay, if you're being told what to do and you do it wrong, well, whose fault is that? It's probably not yours, because you've been told to do it that way. And you can abdicate responsibility and not feel too guilty about it. And finally, we've got an over-reliance on managers to make decisions. Excuse me. So the next two leadership styles are democratic and laissez-faire. Democratic leadership style would see the leader more as a coordinator of decisions, making sure everyone is pulling in the right direction, rather than somebody who's actually making the decisions. There would tend to be two-way communication. It's not just top-down. The leadership team is listening to the workforce, and they're involved in decision-making. Workers are coerced into achieving the company's objectives through their own involvement. You know, they're asked for their opinions on decisions. There may be votes and things on what should be done, and so that creates a sense of involvement with the company, and a sense of loyalty, and that they'll want to achieve their goals. It would link to the consult section of the Tenenbaum-Schmidt continuum, where the manager decides in tandem with the workforce, in a more theory Y type managerial approach. Laissez-faire is a French word. I've never studied French, but I believe it basically means let people get on with their job. Okay, and that's certainly what the leadership style is. The leader is delegator, they delegate responsibility to the workforce. They give people complete freedom. In the most extreme case of laissez-faire, the workers are given complete freedom what to do day to day, you know, even setting their own objectives and things. In a very extreme example, there would be bottom-up communication, reporting to the manager about what problems you're solving, what you're doing. Decision-making power has been totally delegated to the workforce. Workers would tend to be quite highly motivated. They've been coerced through their freedom and responsibility. They've got responsibility for what they do. The links would be to a theory Y leadership style and the team making decisions on the 10-environment continuum. This would be an effective leadership style when time isn't the most pressing factor. So in other words, if you've got a bit of time to consult the workforce, why wouldn't you? Especially if the workforce is highly skilled and responsible. Particularly the laissez-faire you would tend to see in creative industries. I'm thinking computer games, those sort of industries where workers are highly knowledgeable, really motivated. They'll spot the problems long before management and need to be given free rein really in terms of how they solve those. You know, and when the motivation of staff is already high, using these leadership styles could be effective. However, they can be time consuming. There may be a lack of clarity about lines of control and who's actually in charge, and managers, particularly with the laissez-faire system, may not actually know what their teams are doing day to day, and therefore it would make their job quite difficult. And there may be a lack of managerial direction. So how do we use these theories in an exam? Well, it very much would depend on the context of the exam question that you're getting. So, sorry, my phone's just disrupted my train of thought there. Yeah, so if you are given a case study about a business and it's very clear that the business is suffering from challenges in terms of the quality of the work, maybe the workforce aren't that highly skilled, maybe there's a crisis coming up. In that situation, you'd advise the business to use an authoritarian management style. If there are hints in the case study that the workforce is becoming demotivated, that the workforce haven't been given responsibility and perhaps are capable of receiving that responsibility, then you might advocate a change for a more democratic leadership style being employed. Okay, so I hope you found that video helpful.